2025 was, in my opinion, a great year for movies, which sounds a little strange to say while we're in the midst of so much doom and gloom about Hollywood and the industry. But while the industry itself kind of crashes out and tries to coagulate into a giant monopoly, the crews and artists that are doing the work of crafting the movies turned out one of the best and most interesting slates of films I think we've had in years. Sure, tiredly shot franchises and IP-based films still largely dominate the box office, but if you dig even slightly below the surface, you'll find weird, gritty, thematically rich action blockbusters like Danny Boyle's 28 Days Later, where he constructed this whole rig of iPhones to shoot some of the most insane action scenes I've seen in a while. Or you can find the totally goofy, surreal sci-fi action comedy Mickey 17 with an expectedly unhinged performance from Robert Pattinson. There was a snappy, entertaining spy thriller in Steven Soderbergh's Black Bag, and one of the most formally inventive horror films I've seen in a while in Steven Soderbergh's Presence. And if horror is your thing, Zach Cregger expanded his tonally bizarre style of horror further with Weapons, which somehow captured both the absurdity and the eerie feeling of helplessness that pervades much of our current time here in America.
I see something that I don't understand at all.
But maybe you're more interested in movies that use film language to dive into a psychologically harrowing inner landscape, in which case Kristen Stewart's directorial debut, The Chronology of Water, gives us a bold and poetically disjointed exploration of personal trauma shot on 16mm film.
This is good.
Of course it's good.
If more restrained, downbeat A24 indie drama was your thing, Sorry Baby was a gently bittersweet directorial debut from Ava Victor, which used editing in an incredible way, hinging the dramatic core of the film around a single cut. And it was a great year for directorial debuts in general. Besides Sorry Baby and Kristen Stewart's debut, I really enjoyed actor Harris Dickinson's vaguely surreal urchin about a down-on-his-luck guy in London trying to make it, and the offbeat comedy of Andrew DeYoung's Friendship, which was a cringe-inducing kaleidoscopic look at male loneliness, starring none other than Tim Robinson.
You and I will go see this new Marvel. People are saying it's actually nuts. It's driving people crazy.
And that's without even mentioning my favorite directorial debuts, which I'll get to in my top 10, and I'm gonna get to those soon. But I want to make sure I spend some time here with my honorable mentions, because while it's usually pretty obvious which films should hit the top of my list, this year there were so many solid films I had a genuinely difficult time narrowing it down. So how do we decide what the best films of the year are? Well, no critic has tapped into some kind of objective standard. Every best of list is really a kind of favorites list, so whether or not my bests will align with yours is mostly a matter of personal taste, but I can describe some of the qualities in films that most often resonate with me. And the movies I get most excited about usually showcase some aspect of technically great filmmaking, like the stunningly beautiful cinematography of Train Dreams, or the yet again visually immaculate set design of The Phoenician Scheme from Wes Anderson, which features this ethereal opening credits sequence that was created by having the actors perform the scene at double speed while shooting it simultaneously in slow motion. Great filmmaking isn't just about mastering a specific aspect of the craft, though. What's even better is when you can apply that craft to the story in an interesting way. For example, Michael Covino's Splitsville surprised me by having some of the best, most convincing action choreography of the year, employed entirely for comedic effect within a rom-com. Jay Kelly was both a witty and sentimental deconstruction of the movie star, which is asking us to question the cost of ambition and fame. And while trying to get us to sympathize with such a successful yet miserable character is a little bit of a stretch in the film, Noah Baumbach is one of my favorite dialogue writers and has such an off-kilter wit that both George Clooney and Adam Sandler are perfect for. And the way he stages actors in conversation is so inventive that I always enjoy watching his films. And I have to mention Kelly Reichardt's The Mastermind, which gives us Josh O'Connor in this dryly funny look at aimless masculinity while also being a great period piece and deconstruction of the heist genre. I could go on, and there's still much from the year that either isn't available yet or that I haven't had time to catch up on, but I have to draw the line somewhere. So here are my roughly 10 favorite movies from 2025. Lurker, directed by Alex Russell, and yet another directorial debut, really impressed me with its claustrophobic examination of fame, but more specifically, the kind of parasocial relationships that can surround internet celebrity. This movie felt to me like a kind of night crawler for the Instagram social media era. Filmmakers, I think, are still figuring out how to explore and make movies about the new media era we're living in, with many attempts to examine the new dynamics of social fame feeling kind of heavy-handed, often like they're coming from the perspective of an outsider looking in instead of someone who has actually experienced it. I don't know if Alex Russell has actually experienced it, but Lurker gives us what feels like a more accurate depiction of this world. It's relatively contained but grounded by realistic, unsettling performances and styled in a way that feels genuinely tapped into the more internet-centric pop culture atmosphere of our time. If you're interested in an exploration of that sort of underlying kind of antagonistic power dynamic between audience and celebrity, fan and famous that Bo Burnham has been so obsessed with in his work, then I think this movie is for you. The French New Wave is one of the most influential film movements in history, and perhaps the movie that has most become the poster child of this movement is Jean-Luc Godard's debut film Breathless. Making a movie about the making of one of the most influential movies ever made could easily have become too self-serious, but I think Richard Linklater was the perfect person for the job and managed to do it in a way that feels light and weightless, which I think really honors the kind of playful spirit in which the original film was made.
Mon style cinématographique est né
d'une capacité à écrire un scénario.
Extensively researched and immaculately crafted to look like a movie that was made in France in the 1950s, Nouveau Vague has a great sense of authenticity. This movie is a great example of the difference between a period film, aka something that is just set in a specific time, and period filmmaking, or a movie that is made to look and feel like it was made in a specific time. That's not to say this movie is trying to be a Jean-Luc Godard film. Linklater himself said the goal was more to make it feel as if the movie was made by another of Godard's new wave contemporaries at that time in France, and it does feel that way. But beyond the attention to period detail and filmmaking style, this just happens to be one of the most relaxed, enjoyable hangout films in recent memory. The movie never feels overburdened by the weight of Breathless's influence. None of the characters even seem to realize they're making a movie that will change the course of filmmaking, which is great because they didn't know it at the time. This is a movie I have to admit I'm very biased towards. I'm exactly the target audience. It's about a film critic making his first feature film, and I watched it the same year I've also been working on my first feature film.
La meilleure façon de critiquer un film, c'est de faire un film.
So I'll freely admit that it will probably appeal most to people who are cinephiles or filmmakers, but for the reasons I mentioned above, I think it's still pretty great for everyone and worth giving a chance. It's a movie that, as a filmmaker, makes me feel like picking up a camera and just making a film is possible, and I hope it helps inspire a new generation of independent filmmaking. The first film not based on an existing franchise, book, IP, or series to land in the box office top 10 in 5 years, Sinner stands as a great example that original blockbusters can succeed, make a splash, explore a rich thematic landscape, all while still being boldly entertaining and wildly popular. Vampire movies have always been a way to excavate the shadows in ourselves and society, and director Ryan Coogler follows this tradition while turning his gaze towards the place where musical tradition, spirituality, and the forces of cultural appropriation meet within the history of Black culture in America. This doesn't mean the movie is stiff or overburdened with stuffy theory or exposition. Instead, you'll find its exploration of these themes done through powerfully evocative imagery and sound in scenes like this. And the film explores its thematic core with nuance while somehow also maintaining its roots as an action horror thriller. The music is incredible, the performances rock, it looks amazing. It's the first movie to ever be shot the way it was. Movies can have rich shadows, deep contrast, not everything has to be a washed out gray melange. Sinners kind of feels like a miracle right now, the sort of movie that we hope for and imagine is the product of a bygone era of filmmaking. But here it is. Big budget blockbuster filmmakers and studios, please take notes from this movie. One of the things I truly enjoy about cinema is how it can use sound, images, and editing to construct a mood, an atmosphere, and emotion. Cinematic images can manage to tap almost directly into our feelings. Certain combinations of image and sound can work like a musical melody that can strike some kind of internal chord. We don't understand exactly why it makes us feel the way it does. This is a really valuable tool for helping us access and allow an outlet for human emotions and experiences that can be difficult to quantify with words. Things like grief, fear, and love, where describing those things is never really going to do them justice. Our modern world, especially in the culture of the United States, does not leave a lot of room for expressing and processing difficult emotions like depression or grief, despite the fact that everyone at some point faces grief, and depression and anxiety and other difficult emotions are very common. We allow space for negative speech like criticism, anger, and frustration, but have created a lot of taboos around actual expressions of deeper emotions like crying. There is often a lot of shame associated around expressions of these emotions for individuals, much less in communal spaces where these emotions can be expressed and felt together. All that to say, there were 3 movies this year that really felt like explorations of these difficult emotions. The first was the absolutely haunting Sound of Falling, which weaves together the lives of several women across time, where the camera itself seems to be the drifting specter of death, and which offered several scenes and images that have lingered with me all year since I saw the film in the spring. The second was Lynn Ramsey's Die My Love, an almost primal exploration of postpartum depression, which doesn't try to engage with it on an intellectual level, doesn't try to explain it away. Instead, it feels into it, bringing it to vivid life through the performances and sound design. I liked both of those movies, but my pick in this moment is Chloe Zhao's Hamnet, a movie that provides a speculative backstory for the writing of the play Hamlet, but which taps directly into the nerve of grief and how grief can be communally shared and expressed through story. Zhao has further honed her command of poetic cinematic imagery and continues to prove to be the filmmaker who has the best grasp and command of the kind of filmmaking tradition that has been pioneered by Terrence Malick. The true power of this film is not in the story or what's said, but in the lyricism of the imagery alongside the powerful central performances from Jessie Buckley and Paul Mescal. Movies that are exploring this kind of visceral emotion are often very polarizing for audiences. If engaging with these heavy emotions is not what you're in the mood for, a movie that does that so intensely can feel overbearing. And because describing the emotions that these movies grapple with is difficult and often requires poetry, they sometimes get tossed aside as sentimental or cliche. But I often think about that clip of actor Ethan Hawke describing how most people don't care about poetry until a moment where life leaves them grasping to make sense of intense and difficult feelings. Cinema, I think, is one of the few modern spaces where this kind of grief can be communally shared. Hamnet is not just a story about grief, but a story that reflects directly on storytelling's capacity to create space where we can share these difficult feelings together. In a year of excellent debut feature films, my favorite of them all comes from Nigerian director Akinola Davies Jr. My Father's Shadow is an incredibly personal account, which in some ways reminded me of the sensitivity to fluidity of memory and eye for space that we saw in Charlotte Wells' Aftersun, another of the great debut films of this decade. Davies Jr. gives us a loving portrait of a country in the midst of political turmoil, all seen through the hazy recollection of childhood. It's beautifully shot and performed, and is one of those movies where the whole thing seems to radiate with this energy coming off of the central character, in this case, the father. And we really become immersed in what these two brothers' world must have felt like at that time. It'll be out in theaters in the US in February, so catch it then if you have a chance. It's a beautiful film that I highly recommend for everyone. As far as I'm aware, there is only one director who's been served a prison sentence for the film they made this year. For over a decade, Iranian director Jafar Panahi has been making his movies in secret and then smuggling them out of the country in direct defiance of the government banning him from making films and their continual censorship of his work. It Was Just an Accident, a tense, angry, and at times even funny political thriller, is a great movie even without the context of how it was made and what the director has gone through to bring it to your screen. But understanding the backstory and that Panahi based this film on stories from his time in prison and faces yet another prison sentence for making it only adds to the depth of the themes it explores. The movie is grappling with how we should respond to and live with authoritarian oppression, what kind of response is required or justified from those under its thumb. And what impresses me about all of Panahi's work for how radical his political defiance is that his films never lack a sort of tenderness. There's always humanity, humility, and even a sense of humor. It's rare to find someone whose work is so politically bold and conscious without becoming overly reductive propaganda. Watch it once to take in the story and then watch it again and pay close attention to how the necessity of filming in secret manifests in his filmmaking technique and the incredible artistry he uses to work around those constraints. Speaking of politics, there were a few directors this year that presented films that felt to me like their absurdist take on what I'll call the political situation in America. Ari Aster reflected the narcissism of COVID-era politics back to us in the darkly nihilistic and funny Eddington, a movie where all that is needed to really understand the premise is a look at the poster. I like that Aster's take showcases one of the forces that I think has been truly central in spiraling us into this mess.
You're consuming content on the internet that is reinforcing this sort of warped, subjective idea of reality.
This is your best shot at me?
On the other hand, Yorgos Lanthimos' Begonia examined the political climate through the lens of a tense showdown between an alienated underclass that views its predicament through a conspiratorial lens and a billionaire class that appears alien to normal people. I liked both of those movies, but my favorite absurdist political thriller this year, it's amazing that we even get to choose between three, was Paul Thomas Anderson's One Battle After Another, which pitted a burnt-out revolutionary against a fascist goon that felt like he walked off the set of Dr. Strangelove. PTA's vision of the political landscape is in some ways more incendiary than Aster's or Lanthimos's, but quietly, in a way, more hopeful. The real heroes in this movie are found in its periphery, stoically doing what needs to be done to protect the human lives around them. But it actually has heroes, unlike Begonia and Eddington, where it feels like we are too far gone. One Battle After Another suggests that maybe trust and human connection can at least get us through for now. But what I really loved about One Battle After Another was not its political frame or subject matter, but simply the propulsive energy.
You win some and you lose some, Bob. Yeah, Bob.
The score is insane, my favorite of the year. It has nonstop pacing. The dirty cinematography is a mess, but somehow incredibly beautiful.
You know what freedom is? What? No fear.
Characters and story are some of the most important elements of any film, but it's impossible to separate those things from how they are presented in a film. And One Battle After Another just has this incredible energy that hooked me the entire time. And ultimately, that's what makes it my pick for this slot. One of the things I love most about cinema is its ability to transport us somewhere new. And From the opening moments until the end of Surat, I was taken to a place I had never been to before. What was at the core of why I loved Surat was a certain kind of feeling in its atmosphere that it's hard to even describe, but I had never felt it before in a film.
Es mi hija. Hace 5 meses que no sabemos nada de ella.
Hay otra fiesta en el desierto. A lo mejor estará por ahí.
It's not the only thing Surat does well, but one of its most interesting features, I think, is its use of EDM as a score. Electronic dance music usually only shows up in movies when it's being played in a club or when it's used as high energy propulsion during an action scene or something. But anyone who has spent any time in the rave scene or dug beneath the surface of pop EDM knows that there's more dimension there, that this music is often crafted and used to create a kind of trance or spiritual atmosphere, that there's a tenuous relationship between the bliss of forgetting yourself in that trance and something potentially darker. Surat brings this to light, both in how it uses EDM as score and also in how it examines rave culture within the story. It shows us why this appeals to people, why people use it to explore and escape their trauma, but it's not blind to a certain kind of privilege that can be involved, the kind that we see expressed sometimes in places like Burning Man, where the physical hardship of survival that some people face as a daily reality is a plaything for the comfortable who are trying to escape the ennui of modern life. But it also shows us how nature does not play favorites, how life still always hangs in the balance, and that the desert is no respecter of persons. War has been one of the perennial subjects in film, with so many great directors trying their hand at exploring the subject from many different angles. But we have perhaps never had such an intimate and direct look into the actual reality of war as the one revealed to us through 2,000 Meters to Andrika, a new documentary from director Mstislav Chernov, who won an Oscar for Best Documentary a few years ago for his film 20 Days in Mariupol. 2,000 Meters gives us a first-person look at Ukraine's fight to claim one small village. And through this, we get a horrifying glimpse of what 21st century war actually looks like. Chernov's lens on this conflict, though, expands the scope of the film beyond Russia's invasion into Ukraine. It certainly is about that, but it also helps us understand the nature of the struggle over territory that has forever punctuated human history. Or maybe understand is the wrong word. It helps us see it, and in a way, confront the fact that it can't be understood. For as long as war has been a subject in film, the ethics of war films have also been a topic of discussion. How is it even possible to make a film that depicts the reality of war without in some way valorizing or glorifying it? There are movies like this year's Warfare from Alex Garland that tries to critique war by stripping combat of any context, reducing it only to the utter horror and visceral chaos of violence. That kind of film depicts war as a pointless, empty hell. But while this may be true of the violence of combat, war itself as it exists in the world is never actually devoid of context. There are reasons why people are attacked. There are reasons why they fight back. However, cinema must tread lightly here because it is often in showcasing the reasons for a conflict that a war film can become myopic or distance us from the violence, making it too abstract and losing sight of the real horror of war by reductively turning the human lives involved into heroic pawns or nameless victims on a political chessboard. In 2,000 Meters, Chernov finds his way through this tension not by avoiding it or trying to resolve it, but instead by looking directly at it.
Що ти маєш на увазі? Що я ще героїчно, кажи. Не зробив я ще нічого героїчного, а вже попадаю на камери і...
This is a film not just about the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but about war, and not just about war, but about the role cameras play in constructing the narratives that surround war. It's one of the most heavy documentaries I've seen in a long time. It's not for the faint of heart. My recommendation comes with a warning label, but it achieves something incredible by offering us a new glimpse into one of the most thoroughly examined subjects in film history, as well as a newsworthy account of a struggle that is still unfolding today. There are a few things I find more enthralling in movies than just really well-written and performed psychologically rich characters, and stories where watching the film is a process of slowly uncovering a whole world of subtext surrounding those characters and their interactions. Some of my favorite movies of all time are Bergman's classics. He had a way of crafting films that seemed to bring you into contact with a character's soul. These kind of unflinching examinations of the existentially sticky heart of life and each character's struggle with that life and their desire to be seen by each other and their inability to bridge whatever unspeakable gulf separates them from others. Sentimental Value opens with a poetic ode to a house in one of the most beautifully shot sequences of the year, which gives us a wonderful introduction to the family we'll be watching a movie about, but which also establishes a physical space that will become a symbolic backdrop for the rest of the film. Matt, an architect friend of mine, said it was one of the most spatially aware movies he had seen since Parasite, and I have to agree. This movie does an incredibly good job of conveying how a space like a house can start to take on the weight of what happens there. As we're watching the movie, we're aware of and haunted by the space in the same way the family is. Take a look at this scene where there's an argument between the father, played wonderfully by Stellan Skarsgård, and his oldest daughter, played by Renée Rensiv. There's a whole drama playing out in the dialogue, but if you watch closely, there's an entire second layer of drama playing out on all three of their faces as we watch them become aware of and then become frustrated by the familial dynamic that is playing out between them. All of this doesn't just add depth to this movie, it's necessary for the story because it's a movie about all the things that we don't know how to say to each other. There's also a whole meta-modern layer to the story that is examining the way art is used to express emotion and how it can bridge gaps between people where language makes understanding difficult. All of which I love, but it does this, I think, without becoming overburdened or too self-referential and meta in a way that undercuts the tangibility of the story. Ultimately, the reason this is currently my favorite film of the year is just because of the beauty and emotional depth that are in these performances, especially from Inga Lilos's turn as Agnes. These kind of performances are just really rare in film, and yet when they're achieved, they're probably my favorite thing to watch on screen. And with moments that grip you so deeply, everything else in the film just kind of falls away. There are a lot of layers here to uncover and elements of the story that grow deeper with each viewing. And it's maybe one of the best movies I've ever seen about depression that isn't itself just horribly depressing. So if you like movies like Tar, Aftersun, Bergman films like Autumn Sonata or Wild Strawberries, or a movie like Phantom Thread, I would be pretty surprised if you didn't like this one as well. So those are my favorite movies of 2025, at least based on what I've seen so far. If I didn't mention one that you love, there's a decent chance I just haven't seen it yet. So let me know in the comments which were your favorites of the year. I'm excited about 2026. There's a lot of great movies coming up next year, including some of the ones on this list that have yet to be released. Among the movies released in 2026 will be my very first feature-length documentary film. Out of a Flood is a first-hand account of how my community responded to the devastation of Hurricane Helene when it struck Western North Carolina in 2024. I'll have a lot more to say and announce about this movie in the coming year, but if you want the most up-to-date information, you can get that by subscribing to my newsletter at seeingthroughfilm.com or by joining my Patreon at patreon.com/ThomasFlight. The folks subscribed at those places will get updates as soon as they're available. I hope you have a great new year and watch some incredible films. This video was made possible by my sponsor, Givewell. 2025 might have been a great year for the movies, but it continues to be a difficult time for many people all around the world, as some of the movies illustrate. If you're looking for ways to give back and help, navigating the world of all the possible nonprofits you could give to can feel incredibly daunting. How do you ensure the money you donate is having a tangible, meaningful impact on people's lives? Givewell, the sponsor for this video, is an organization that helps with just that. They spent 18 years meticulously researching global health and poverty alleviation to find the giving opportunities that save or improve more lives per dollar. I've used Givewell for years to help make informed decisions, and along with over 150,000 other donors, we've directed more than $2.5 billion to their recommended charities. Rigorous evidence suggests that these donations will save over 300,000 lives and improve the lives of millions more. For example, their research details how just $2 delivers a vitamin A supplement to children that can prevent life-threatening deficiencies. But you can find all of their research and recommendations on the site for free. And thanks to donors who sponsor their research, Givewell doesn't even take a cut from your tax-deductible donations. So this is the rare sponsor read where I'm not trying to sell you anything. I just get to tell you about an excellent resource that's available, which has helped inform my own giving decisions, and that I think you will find helpful as well. If this is your first time giving through Givewell, you can have your donation matched for up to $100 before the end of the year, or as long as matching funds last. And to claim that match, just go to givewell.org, pick YouTube, and enter Thomas Flight at checkout. Just make sure they know you heard about Givewell from me to get that donation matched. Again, that's givewell.org to donate or browse their research and learn more. Thanks again to Givewell for their support of this video.